Hey, good morning, everybody. Hopefully, you all can hear me. It is 8:58, so it is very, very close to our starting time. However, I know that we still have quite a few people who need to join us, so we're probably going to get started around 9:05. But if you haven't already, please put your name and the program that you are with in the chat box. That way, when we are filling out the sign-in sheets later, we can make sure that you guys are getting credit for attending. I will make this reminder again right before we get started. Thank you. All righty, everybody. It is 9:05, so we are going to go ahead and get started. Thank you all for attending today. This is LACES 101 Part 2. So hopefully, um, there's not too many people that this is their first session. Hopefully, you were in Part 1, and I'm thinking quite a few of the people who were in Part 1 were also in the data entry webinar from yesterday, as well. So, because we'd kind of planned them out to be a series like that, it was kind of I won't say last minute change, but we had kind of changed a few things up a little bit, and we will be offering it in that format in the future as well, because we want all of the LACES trainings to really act as building blocks. Um, so that will be the format moving forward. Okay. Give me 1 second here. Okay. So what we're going to do real quick, this training, part 2 is, and before I do get started, I just want to send out the reminder for those people who have joined the session in the last few minutes or so. If you haven't already, please do put your name and the program that you are with in the chat box. It does help us make sure that you receive credit for attending when we are filling out the sign-in sheets after the training. So please make sure to do that. Okay, so this training is going to be quite different from the one yesterday. Part 1 of LACES 101 was very heavy on PowerPoint slides. Part 2 is not so much. Most of Part 2 is going to be spent in LACES, so we're going to be doing quite a bit of hands-on. But before we do that, I did want to kind of do a little review of Part 1, just to see if you guys had any questions on certain things that were covered during Part 1 of the training. I just kind of highlighted a few things here, but if you have questions about anything else, then please make sure to either put those in the chat box, or you can unmute yourself and ask your question that way. So a few of the things that I just wanted to make sure to check to see if you guys had any questions on, or if you needed some clarification on certain things that were discussed yesterday. So the accountability measures, those are what we use to measure the effectiveness of adult education. So within those accountability measures, we have the performance measures that we track and that we measure while a student is in our adult ed programs. And then we also have our follow-up measures that we track once a student leaves the program. And so once again, just let us know if you do have any questions. And things like periods of participation, or otherwise known as a POP. I know that those can be kind of confusing. So this is your time to ask any questions on any of those elements that we covered from LACES 101. On the intake form for the barriers to employment, does something have to be selected for our students? Are you asking if we are required to report at least one barrier? Is that kind of okay? Yes, yes, we are required to report at least one barrier for our students, and we have several barriers. Off the top of my head, I want to say 11 or 12. That might or might not be wrong, but there are. We do have to have at least one barrier selected out of these 3. So there are 3 barriers. One is cultural barriers. The other one is English language learner. And then the third one is going to be low literacy levels. So out of those three, we are required to select at least one of those barriers. Now, there might be a situation where even if you are asking these questions and you are having a conversation with the new student regarding these barriers, you might not necessarily get a definitive yes, or they might not answer you at all. In that case, we do still need to report at least one of those three barriers that, based on the conversation that you have had with the student, what would be your best judgment in that situation. And so it's not a perfect scenario, but that's, yeah, not a problem, Deborah. We mentioned yesterday that there are a bunch of resources out there to help programs kind of navigate the barriers to employment when they are talking to students, and we can send those out to you. Matter of fact, I did create a course on Canvas that has all those barriers on it. So, what would probably just be best, honestly, since that would be, I mean, that's a part of LACES training, if you ask me, would be to include that as an additional module in the LACES Canvas course, is to include all those resources. So I'm going to make a note to do that, because those resources can only help you. Because again, it's kind of a tricky situation. Ask it about the barriers and then ask it about the social security number. Those can kind of fall hand in hand. Okay. That's a really good question. Any other questions regarding any of these topics on screen, or anything else that we talked about yesterday for LACES 101? Anything that you need clarification on? We did have a question as far as the LACES training, the actually hands-on part that we're going to be doing today. If we're going to be using the training database, and what I would say to that is, I am going to be using the training database on my end, and you can certainly do that yourself as well if you just want to follow along with exactly what I'm doing. But if you feel more comfortable and if it makes more sense and it gives you more context to use your actual program data, then that's that would be up to you. That's totally up to you. But I would say that that's fine though. Okay. Any other questions? If there are not any other questions right now, and you guys think you might have some questions later or something else pops up, you can always contact us. And please let us know if you do not have access to the LACES Canvas course. That Canvas course has a whole bunch of information and resources and guides and instructions on it for you guys to reference, including these PowerPoints.
Somebody did ask
Oh.
if they can review the training, and I answered it in the chat. So.
Okay, good deal. Okay, Deborah Flag. Access to the Canvas course. I got you, Deborah. And then, yeah. Okay. Yeah, and what I'll do is for everybody who signed up for this training, because I sent the Canvas course link out to everybody who signed up for data entry and part one. But I'll do the same um, for for everybody who signed up for part two as well, just in case I miss somebody. Okay. And we do receive recordings of these trainings. So once we kind of clean them up a little bit, and you know, we can also upload those to the Canvas course as well. So you guys have a actual recording to reference back to, along with all the other resources. So I'll make sure that that gets out to you all. Okay. So with that being said, we will move right along with our part two, uh, with our hands-on demonstration in LACES. So if you guys have not already done so, and once again, I apologize for the format. I know it's not ideal to have my screen when I am doing the hands-on portion, and then you guys also being logged in um, to your own account to try and follow along. So I know it's not the most ideal situation in the world, and hopefully we will be getting back to in person very soon. It really just depends on the number of participants that we have. Um, if we if we are thinking about going back to in person soon, hopefully with the vaccine and all that, it'll be sooner rather than later. But we might just have to break the trainings up even more, so it's just a smaller number of people in person who are attending. But that's neither here nor there. So let's go ahead. Log into your LACES account. And as I was saying earlier, you can choose the AR LACES training database when you are logging into LACES, or if you are more comfortable with your own program, you can do that as well. Okay, that's just some references for NRS. And I am now, give me 1 second. I'm going to switch over to, I'm going to log into my own LACES. And then I'm going to share my screen with you all. Okay. All right. So I'm going to sign in. And as I said earlier, I am going to use AR LACES training. Mainly because, and this might surprise you, but mainly because we at the state office, or some of us, uh, don't actually have the permissions to enter data into programs. Only a select few of us at the state office have that kind of power. So that's another reason why I am using the training database, so I can actually enter data. Oh, thank you for the tip, Josh. Josh was saying that these split screen functions help with seeing both windows at the same time. Thank you for that little tip, Josh. Okay. So I am logged into LACES. Hopefully you are as well. And so I really just, especially for those who have already been in a LACES 101, they might have been here yesterday. I'm just going to do a very brief overview of the student grid. Um, And I do want, just like as a little tidbit, if you all remember when we created our view yesterday um, through the view manager, and we set it up as our default view, look which look what showed up as as our view when we first logged in. It's the view that we created yesterday and set as our default view. So just always remember, if you want to see the same thing when you log in, set that view as your default. And so just a little overview here of the student grid to go through a few menus here. We have our main student grid here with our columns, which are created by our view. Whatever we see in our columns, that is what we set in our view manager. And so we also have our column headers here, like last name, first name, overall status. The cool thing about these column headers is that they are interactive. You can type into the column headers to be able to filter any searches that you want to run. And we're going to get into that a little bit later. Okay. But just kind of as a review, does anybody have any questions or need any clarifications or anything to kind of be covered again as it pertains to anything that we covered yesterday, or I should say yesterday during data entry, um, as it pertains to the view manager or anything of that nature? Because through um, through my hands-on portion of the agenda for part two, we're kind of going to be covering some of that information again already. So just wanted to make sure before I jumped into a few new things. Okay. So we are in our student grid, as I've said. Um, and so I mentioned columns and the column headers. And so what I really want to do is I just want to show you how you can perform simple searches in the column headers by filtering. Okay. So, and one of the things that I want to start with is last name and first name. Okay. So something as simple as if you have a lot of students in your student grid and you want to isolate that one or more students that have a particular first name um, in your student grid, you can simply do that. Again, these column headers are interactive, so you can type into them. So if I want to find, I actually don't know if there's anybody in here named John, but we're going to try it. If I want to find a student named John, I'm just going to type that name in, and I'm going to click on the filter icon here in the column header, and it's going to give me filter options. And so most of the time, using contains for something like this will be fine. But if you want to be real specific about what you're searching for, then you would want to use is equal to. Okay. Uh, for my purposes, I'm just going to hit contains. And I can already tell LACES is moving pretty slow this morning. There we go. Okay. So I hit contains on the name John for first name. And as you can see, because I hit contains and not is equal to, it gave me one result of Johnny, right? Because John is, because Johnny contains the word John. Um, but that's one simple way that if you are trying to filter for a name, you can do that for first and last name. Okay. And then if you needed to edit that search, the easiest way to do that is to go up to the search. And just a reminder from what I said yesterday morning, any searches that you run, they're going to show up in LACES in this area of the screen as this green bar. Okay. So the easiest way to do that is just to hit the pencil icon. If you want to edit the search, I'm saying, is just to hit that pencil icon, and then uh, you can change anything about that search that you did. So for example, if I did want to change the filter option, I could click on that drop down, and instead of contains, I could say um, equal. I could hit apply, and then eventually, this is going to be a long training if LACES is this slow all morning. Eventually, my search is going to update to include just those things that say John, just those names that are John. Okay. And again, this is something that you could do for any of the column headers that you have in your student grid or your class grid. If you are in the class grid, you could also do searches just like this in your column headers. Okay. So I'm going to close that search out. I'm going to go up to this green search bar here, and I'm just going to X out of that, which is going to take me back to my original student grid. And speaking of Xing out of things up here, I do want to make note of this current fiscal year that is up here. That every time you log into LACES, it will always default to the current fiscal year. And so it is only going to show you students in your student grid who are either reportable individuals for that current fiscal year or who are participants for that current fiscal year. If you would like to see any and all students that have ever been entered into LACES, all you need to do is just X out of that. Okay. And then your student grid will be populated with all students and not just those who are in the current fiscal year. Okay. And so this was, I'm going to do one more column search. And this was one that I actually did yesterday because I was talking about social security numbers and the importance of having them. And one of the ways that you can isolate those students who are missing a social security number is, one, you need to make sure that you have a social security number in your student grid. And how do we make sure that social security number column is in our student grid? Pop quiz time. Ooh, that is a great question. M. Wells, I wish I knew what your first name was, but that is a great question, which I will answer here in just a second. I need somebody to answer this pop quiz question, though. So what needs to happen first to make sure that I have this social security number column in my student grid? Because if you log into LACES and it goes to your default view, this is not going to be in your student grid. So what do you need to do to make sure that that is in your student grid? View manager. All right. You all win the prize of being correct. Congratulations. Unfortunately, I can't hand out virtual prizes. I can just clap for you. Yes, but that is correct. You need to add that you need to add that field in your view manager. So there you go. Nicole just said, good job, Northwest. Okay, yes. So once we have that information in our student grid, once we've added it to our view manager, and again, if you have any confusion about how to do that, please let me know. I can run through that again. But once you do that, then you can filter that column. So I am looking for those students and only those students who are missing a social security number. So in this case, I could just go to the social security number column and I don't even need to type anything in the column header. I just need to hit the filter button because I just want to see those students who are missing a social. And you can already see here, we can see some blank fields right here. Okay, so we already see a few students who don't have a social. But to see all the students who don't have a social, we just need to hit the filter icon, go down to no value, and click on that. And then our student grid is going to be updated with just those students who don't have a social in that column. Okay. All right.
I see the question. Oak Turner is asking, are you going to show how to, I guess, add a column header?
Yes. Yes, and that was one of the things that that if you weren't able to attend uh, yesterday morning, that yes, I wanted to make sure to cover that information again. So, just to give a little know-how to add this column, and make sure that any columns that you want to add to your view and to your student grid are there. I'm going to go through that just real quick one more time. Okay, so this is a view that we created yesterday during our data entry webinar. And so to create your own view, you can either hit the blue view button right here, or you can hit your drop down right here. And then you can go down to Open View Manager. Okay. And now this might look different. If you're doing this for the first time, this is going to look different than what you're seeing on your screen. Because if you're doing this for the first time, what you are probably seeing is student list. Okay. And so you are probably seeing, and I'm pointing at the screen like you guys can see, but you are probably seeing the available fields and the selected fields being grayed out. Okay. Um, to change that, you need to either hit new or copy. Okay, so if you hit new, it is going to allow you to create a view from scratch. It's going to be a blank slate, and then all these available fields are going to be at your disposal, and you can choose whatever you need to choose. As I said yesterday, I would always encourage you to select copy because that is going to let you work from the foundation of the view that's already there. Okay, so you don't have to start from scratch. You can just add or delete from the view that you already have. So we're going to rename this. Once you hit new or copy, it's going to ask you to name your view. So we're going to say, you can name it whatever you want to, honestly, whatever you want to. So I will say training part 2. I'm going to hit save, and that is going to open up our available fields. And you'll see over here on the far right, we have our selected fields that we already have in our view. And you'll notice that what we have in our selected fields is what is going to show up in the student grid. Okay. These fields are basically just another way to say that these are your columns in your student grid. Okay. So for the example that I'm using right now, we want to add, and as you can see, you have a ton of available fields that you want to add, that you can add, I should say. So for our purposes here, we want to add a social security number. We want to add that column to our student grids. So we just need to scroll down, find SSN, select that, and then just click add. And you can do that for any field that you think is necessary for you in your role in the program to be able to see in your student grid. Okay. So once we've done that, we might want to reorder our fields. Like if I want the social security number column to be closer to the top, then I can move that. You have these options to move up and move down. Um, so I'm going to do that. Once I do that, I'm going to hit save, and my student grid is going to be updated with that information that I saved in my view manager. Okay. Sorry for the sniffles. Okay. And then, as I mentioned yesterday and then earlier this morning, um, you can you can set the view that you save as your default view. So it's the same thing that you see every single time that you log on to LACES. And to do that, we can just go back to our drop down menu here. We click on that and we have the option to set this view as our default. And if you do that, that's what you'll see every time you log in. So I'll go ahead and do that. Okay. And now you noticed that even when we changed our view, our search for social security numbers still stayed there. It didn't reset, it didn't delete or anything like that. It was still there. So we are still only showing students in our student grid who do not have a social security number. Okay. And this was a particularly important search that I wanted to show again, um, just because on the new quarterly report, which I promise is coming out sometime soon, um, we will be asking for that information. So one of the questions that we are going to be asking about is how many students in your program are missing a social security number, and then what percentage of students in your program are missing a social. So this search is going to allow you, whoever is going to be doing the quarterly report in your program, is going to allow you to answer that question. Okay. Any questions about doing searches through the column headers? Any questions about filtering or anything of that nature? Once again, you can, what you search or what you want to search and filter via the column headers is entirely dependent on what you set up in the view manager. Okay. So just always remember that if there is if there's not some information in your student grid that you feel like needs to be there, just always remember that you know that you can go to your view manager and you can add any additional columns that you feel like are important for you to be able to see, and then search and edit. Yes. Okay. Yes. I'm glad that you sent me that reminder. Okay. So there is a question. Is there a last fiscal year option? So there is not technically in that wording a option to select a previous fiscal year. There is, however, a way that you can isolate students from a particular time period um, who had hours for a particular time period. For example, a previous fiscal year. So I will show you how to do that. But first, I'm going to close out this Social Security search that I ran, and again, it's as easy as just hitting X on that search. So I'm back to my normal student grid. Okay, so you can do a hours search to find students who had hours attended for a particular time period. To do that, you have this little blue searches button over here that you want to click on. Now, I understand, depending on your role in LACES, this might look a little bit different for you than it does me. If that's the case and you feel like you need access to more information, that is a discussion to have with your director, because they would set your role in LACES. Um, and then if they need assistance with that, Literacy Pro is always very helpful when it comes to setting roles. Um, so anyway, get off track. So the hours search, specifically if you just want to see students from the previous fiscal year. So we hit our little blue searches button. Then if we go down here, we have this hours drop down option. Okay. We can click on that. And then we want to select hours attended. Okay. So just click on hours attended. And that is going to show us another box. Okay. Where we have a few options. So we can set a few parameters for this, for our search, right? So what I always do if I am looking for students from a previous fiscal year, I am always going to put in 0 hours in this box, because I am searching for students who have at least 0 hours. That is going to include any and all students that had possibly been entered into LACES in the previous fiscal year. Okay. So even ones that had, they might have only shown up for intake. You put those hours in, and then for whatever reason, they never came back. Even those students will show up as long as you do at least 0 hours. And so now we want to set our date parameters. So if we're looking for the previous fiscal year, we'll just do those dates. So uh, between the dates of not January, July 1st, 2019 and June 30th of 2020. You don't really have to worry about these two drop downs right here. The only thing that you might want to consider is this second one when it's asking about your hours type. So, for example, if you wanted to run that same search for students in the previous fiscal year and you only wanted to see students who, for example, had distance learning hours, then you would select that option. Otherwise, if you don't select anything, it's going to show all students, all hours types. It's going to cover everything. Okay. Once we set our parameters for this search, we're going to hit apply. And I'm in the training database, so my numbers are going to be kind of weird here. But your student grid is going to be updated with just those students for that time period. And as you might imagine, you can set those date parameters for whatever you want to. If you just want to set it for a particular quarter for last year, you can do that. Matter of fact, that's one of the things that you do when you fill out the quarterly report. We ask you guys for number of participants for this quarter compared to last quarter, to the same quarter for last year. So yeah, you can set those date parameters for any date range that you like. I hope that answered the question.
Somebody, and you answered this. M. Wells, is there a last fiscal year option?
Yeah, that's what I was just doing
Last
for the.
fiscal.
Yeah,
All
yeah,
right,
yeah.
I'm
No,
gonna
you
get
good.
this week.
No,
Sorry.
no, no, you good. Yeah. Okay, good deal. Okay. Yeah, and again, that could be for the entire fiscal year. Once again, any date range that you need to do a search for, that would be your best bet for doing that. Okay. And so one of the things, this is kind of part of my agenda too here. So you can drill down on searches, or kind of what I like to say, you could stack searches. Okay. So for example, um, if you wanted to, so like I just did an hours attended search, right? I just did hours attended for all the students from the previous fiscal year. Okay. If you want to keep that search, you can add on to that search as much times as you like, honestly. Um, it just depends on how much you want to drill down in that search. Okay. So, for example, for students from the previous fiscal year, if I want to find out how many of those students, and again, this is my numbers are going to be really weird in the training database, so just kind of bear with me there. But for example, for last year, if you wanted to run a search for entry level, for example, on top of that hour search that we already did, you could go to your entry level column, and then if you wanted to be real specific, you could just type in ABEL1. I think we have a L1 somewhere in there. I at least want to show one that's going to show up. Let's actually do ESL L1, but you could do this for any level, obviously. Um, so for my students from the previous fiscal year, how many had an entry level of ESL level 1? So since I'm being really specific about this search, I need to choose the filter option is equal to. Okay. And then that's going to update my student grid to just that student who had that specific entry level. But you'll notice here we have these two searches going on at the same time. Okay. We have our hours attended search that we ran for students in the previous fiscal year. And now we have our entry level search that we ran here. Okay. You could stack that even more if you wanted to. Our options are going to be a little bit limited at this point because we just have this one student in the training database, but hopefully you get the idea that depending on what you have in your student grid, um, you could filter for something else as well. Okay, so if I wanted to, just for example, check their overall status, and I wanted have my caps locks on, my cap lock on, and I wanted to, accidentally did a search there. Didn't mean to. And if you ever do an accidental search, you can just easily close it out and start over. But if I just wanted to do a search for, a student who was enrolled, I would just type that into their overall status and either hit is equal to or contains, and it would be the same thing. Let's close out of this search because it's kind of limiting us a little bit. I'm going to close this entry level search because I want to show you another way that you can search. Okay. Apparently, none of these students in the training database, except for one student, well, two, I have two, had been assessed. Okay. So another way that you can do a search on top of another search, for example, if you don't, if you kind of want to broaden your search outside of just what you have in your student grid, you can always use the add search button up here. Okay. And I'm going to close out of this hours attended search because I want to do a few searches in particular. Okay. Okay, so I close out of that search and now I'm back to my original student grid that we started with. Okay, so I'm going to click on the add search button. Okay. Now you have a drop down box over here and it's going to give you a whole bunch of options that can honestly be kind of overwhelming. A whole bunch of options here. So it'll be helpful to know what you're searching for beforehand, because otherwise you can get kind of lost in all of these options. Okay, so what I want to search for is I want to search for student keyword. Okay, so a good way to shorten your search options is just type what you are wanting to search for up in this box, and it will shorten your options almost immediately. So I want to search by student keyword. So I'm gonna select student keyword, and I am going to. You also have your box for your filter options right here. Okay, so it defaults to equal, but you can change that to whatever you want your filter options to be. Either contains. I'm going to change mine to contains because I want to see if this training database has any students with a keyword of snap. So I'm just going to simply type in the word snap. I'm going to click into my white space here so the apply button shows up. Just always remember to do that. If you don't see the apply button, click into the white space. So click apply, and there you go. Our student grid was updated, and it is showing me 32 students who have a student keyword of snap. Okay. You could edit that as well, just as we were talking about earlier. You don't have to do a new search. You could go up to the search that you already have in this green bar and click on your pencil there. And I might want to see if I have any students who have a keyword of reentry. Okay. I'll click apply, and I do. I have my student grid has been updated to show me 10 students who have a student keyword of reentry. Okay. Now, something else you can do, just like we were able to stack searches with our columns, you can also do that here. Okay. So I'm going to go back to my green bar here. I'm going to click on the edit tab, and you'll notice this little plus sign over here. Okay. If you click on that, that's going to allow you to add another search field to your search that you already have. Okay. So we are quite literally stacking searches on top of one another. Okay. So once again, I might want to see, I might want to do a hours search. Okay. So I'm going to type in hours, and I might just want to see out of students who have a keyword of reentry, um, how many have either greater than or equal to. Actually, you know what? I'm going to do less than or equal to 40 hours. Since this is the training database, I actually want some data to show up. So I'm going to choose my filter option of less than or equal to.
There's a question in the chat box.
Okay.
Does the keyword search also pull information from keyword two?
Keyword two.
Does the keyword search also pull information from keyword two? Coming from DJ.
Okay. Um, that's a good question. Let's find out. Give me 1 second. Um, I'm going to. I'm actually kind of curious if in the training database how many hours these reentry students have. So on top of my reentry student keyword search, I'm going to do out of those who have less than or equal to 40 hours. I'm going to hit apply, and actually, that search didn't make any sense, guys, because of course it's going to show all of them less than or equal to, you know, if they have 0 hours. So let me change my search real quick. That's the good thing that you can do with these searches. You can easily edit them. So I'm going to change it to greater than or equal to 12 hours. Let's see if anybody shows up for that. And I don't have anybody who showed up for that search because they probably didn't have any hours because this is the training database. But hopefully you get the idea of how to stack those searches. So now, I think we had a question regarding student keyword two. Um, let's see here. So in our search, now, are you talking about the customized um, keyword, that custom string?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification. Whew, gonna got too many drop downs going on here. Okay. If you need to close out a search in this box, you could just hit this X out, which I'm going to do right now to close that search that I just did. So what we can do is, why does it keep doing that? There we go. Is I'm going to type in custom, and depending on the custom string that you used, and please be note note that you do have certain headers, I guess you could call them, or certain umbrellas that these are falling under. So if you are looking for a custom string in regards to students, then if you're looking for a keyword two, then that is probably what you would want um, to select. So you might need to go this route by using custom, whether it's custom string one, two, or three, to find that information, just however you set it up in your program. Um, I hope that helps. That's actually that's a really good question. Yeah, so I would just what I would do is since LACES is, you know, very intuitive, very customizable, and they make it pretty easy for you to pull information out that you put in. I would just kind of play around with these searches, especially in that situation where it is a custom string or something that you created like that. Um, you might just kind of have to play around with your search a little bit. Okay, yeah. Yeah, because you have multiple keywords. Because it might be a Snap client, but they're also, but they also fall under a different
Right.
category as well. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, I'm gonna close out that search. Let's take a. I just realized what time it was. Let's take a quick break. I need a coffee break myself. I don't know about you guys, but we're gonna come back. We're gonna continue on with just one or two more searches, and then I'm gonna get into the NRS tables. Okay. So let's come back at 10:10, and then we will continue on with the hands-on. All right, everybody. It is 10:10, so we are coming back from our break, and I am going to switch back to our LACES screen here. Okay, so just kind of picking up where we left off, we were performing searches using the add search button, and a couple more searches before we move on to NRS tables that I wanted to highlight um, were now before I do this search, I know that programs get their post testing alerts as well, but another way that you can view students who who might have more than 40 hours since their last assessment is by doing a search. And so we have hit our add search button, and we are going to, and this is the way that I found this search. I just typed in the word um, since, and then that is going to show me instructional hours since last assessed in subject area. Okay. So I'm going to select that option. I'm going to change my filter option to greater than or equal to, and then I'm going to type in 40. Okay. Always remember to click on the white space so that apply button will show up. So I've set my search. I'm going to click apply, and of course in the training database. And maybe it's this few students in your program as well. But we do show one student who their current fiscal year instructional hours is at 50, and it tells me that they've only been assessed once, so they only have that pretest. But they have 50 instructional hours, so it's time for them to post test. So that is also a search that you can do as well. That might come in handy. Okay. Another search that I wanted to highlight from my end, since it has been brought up, the COVID-19 comment types. We were showing how to enter comment types, specifically those COVID-19 ones, into a student record. And so I'm going to show you how to search for those students who do have a COVID-19 comment type. And so I am going to open up this search box again, and I'm just so in order to shorten my search options and get there quicker, I'm just going to type in the word comment, and then I'm going to go down to comment type, and then since we do have multiple COVID comment type options, I don't want to be super specific with my filter, or at least I don't want to be, unless you are trying to find a very specific COVID comment type. But for this search, I'm just going to use the contains filter option. And then I'm just going to type in the word COVID. And I think we might have a couple in the training database, but I'm going to go ahead and hit apply. And we actually have more than a couple. Okay. Um, Now, to verify this, if you want to actually go into the student record to see what the comment type is, and to actually see what the comment is, then you can open up a student record. I'm just going to open up this student's record. And then in the student data tab, I'm going to scroll down to comments. I'm going to open up that comment panel. And then as you can see here, they have the COVID-19 comment type of unable to post tests, with a comment being program closed and testing closed. And so, just to reiterate what I was saying yesterday, this is a really good way that you, as a local program, can keep track of the impact that COVID uh, might be having on your program. And then us at the state level, we can also perform these searches. We can go into a program's database, and I could do this same exact search for comment types, and I can see how many students that program has that has this comment type, and then that'll give me a good idea. You know, especially if that program's numbers are lower than usual, then doing this search is going to give me a good idea as to why that might be. You know, so that's the main purpose behind the COVID comment type, is just to measure the impact that it's having on our programs and our students. Okay. All right. Any questions regarding searches, whether they be in the column headers or whether they be from doing an ad search? Any questions? Okay. Alrighty. So with that, I am going to close out this search that I did for comment types. I'm going to take me back to my original student grid. And now we're going to look at some NRS tables. We're not going to look at all of the NRS tables because honestly, there's a lot, and there's really only about a handful that you honestly need to really be aware of. And so to get there, I'm actually going to kind of back out of this just to show you how to get there. So to get there, we need to go to our blue searches button again. Not a problem, Rebecca. We need to go to our blue searches again, which is going to open up that left panel. And the very first option that we see here is called NRS. Okay. And we want to click on that drop down. And as I was saying, that's going to show us a whole bunch of NRS tables. That's also going to show us a few other options. For example, one that I would tell you about here is the current fiscal year. Earlier in the session, we closed out those current fiscal year parameters. But if you need to add them back on, then you would simply find it here under NRS and then just click add. And then that's going to add those parameters back to your student grid to just show you that those students in your current fiscal year. Okay. So some of the tables that I want to focus on are mainly the NRS tables 1 through 4. And I also want to do a few searches from those tables because, as you'll find out, the tables are interactive. Like the participant numbers on the tables, you can actually click on those and your student grid is going to be updated with just those students that you click on. And then from there, as you can probably guess, you can run all kinds of searches similar to the ones that we ran before. So, for example, I'm just going to start with our NRS table 1, which is a good place to start. Which our NRS table 1 is really a table that shows our participants. And just a quick little pop quiz: what makes up a participant? I wish I had music. All right, there you go. If they have more than 12 hours, and they also have to have an assessment on file as well. So those 12 hours and a pretest. Because as you'll see on this table that I'm about to show you right now, this table has our students set by their entering EFL. Okay. And it also shows them by their ethnicity and their gender as well. So I'm just going to click on, well, actually, I'm going to close this out because being the training database, we have a lot more information, I think, in the 1819 fiscal year. So when you first click on these tables, you're going to see a drop down box here that is going to ask you the fiscal year that you want to choose. Okay. So for our purposes here, I'm going to choose fiscal year 1819. Of course, being in 2021, most of you all would be selecting 2021 if you are looking at current fiscal year data. Okay. But just for the purpose of the training, I am going to select 1819 because we have a few more students, not a lot. But as you can see on table one, it is sorting our students by their entry in EFL, as well as their race and ethnicity and their gender. Okay, so there's a lot of different ways that you can use this table. If you just want to simply look at your students who are in ABE level 2, you would look at ABE level 2 and then just go all the way over to your total column over here. And again, these numbers are interactive. So I can click on that number 7 and my student grid is going to be updated with just those 7 students. Okay. And so again, you might want to run some searches or drill down further on this particular subset of students. So, for example, I might want to know how these students are performing, how my level 2 students are performing, right? So, so I have selected my level 2 students from table 1. And so now what I want to do is I want to select table 4 because table 4 is our performance table. And that is going to break our students down by um, um, attendance hours, by EFL gains earned, um, by a secondary school diploma earned, as well as additional information. So I want to see how my level 2 students are performing. I'm going to add a table 4. Make a note here that you need to be consistent with the fiscal years that you are choosing um, if you are stacking tables. Uh, you know, just to make sure that the data is actually correct. Okay, so I chose fiscal year 1819 for my table 1 students, and now I also need to choose fiscal year 1819 when I am running a table 4 on those students. Okay, so I selected table 4, and again, this is a table 4 for just those 7 students that I selected from table 1. And then as you can see, that is verified here. It's just going to show me those 7 students. So as I was saying, this is going to show you total attendance hours for those students, how many have earned at least one EFL gain. So out of those 7 students, this is showing me that 1 has an EFL gain. Out of those 7 students, how many have attained a secondary school diploma? Also 1. And then we have some other information here as well that we'd like you guys to, just be aware of, especially columns G and columns H on table 4. So column G, that is your number of participants who were separated from the program, meaning they went 90 days without any activity. They were separated from the program before they ever achieved a MSG. And just as a reminder, a student can achieve a MSG by either earning a EFL gain or getting that GED. Either one of those is going to get that student a MSG. Okay, and then column H, this is telling you about your number of students who are still in the program who haven't been separated yet, but they've yet to earn an MSG. Okay. So that's an important column to pay attention to because that is letting you know that you still have people in your program that could impact your funding, that you still might be able to reach to earn that MSG. Okay. And then we always talk about E&E, effective and efficient. That's not just the name of the podcast that me and Dan do, but we always talk about E&E, right? And so usually when we talk about E&E, we are mostly referring to this column M. Okay. So out of all of the periods of participations that a program has, how many of those have earned a MSG? And that is going to be your E&E. So for example, for just our level 2 students, remember, this is just a table 4 on those level 2 students we selected from table 1. They have a E&E right now of 28.6. Okay. So still some room for improvement for those level 2 students. Okay. Any questions about that? Over time of doing these trainings, I have tried to speak slower because it is really easy to once you kind of get going with this hands-on portion, it can be really easy to just start going and talking and completely forget that people are trying to listen and follow along. So just let me know if you have any questions about any of these steps that we're going through. Okay. So that was table 1. I'm going to close out my table 1 search. And we're from the South. Very good point. So I'm going to close out my table 1 search here, which once again is going to take me back to my original student grid. And now I'm going to open up table 2. And this is another demographic table. It kind of changes the demographics a little bit though. This time I'm going to say, you know what I'm going to do real quick? I need to make this very important point. So you will notice that before I even ran my table 1 search, I set my current fiscal year parameters back onto my student grid. You want to be careful about doing this. Because if you are running a NRS table search for a previous fiscal year, your data is going to be really skewed if you have that current fiscal year set. Okay. And skewed in a bad way. Your numbers are going to be very limited because that, yeah. So if you are doing searches from a previous fiscal year, make sure that that the current fiscal year search is always closed first. That's probably why my numbers were so low on that table. So I'm going to close that before I do any other searches on previous fiscal years. Okay. So just an important point to remember there. Okay. So I am going to open up my NRS table 2, and that's going to sort our participants by age, ethnicity, and gender. Okay, so I'm going to select fiscal year 1819. And as you can see, it is sorting our participants by age group. Okay, and so just as we did on table 1, you can select any demographic group that you want to select on this table, and you can stack searches on top of that group. So, for example, let's pick. I want to isolate my Hispanic Latino males who are in the 25 to 44 age group. Okay. So I'm going to click on this number here. So I have 5 Hispanic Latino males who are in the 25 to 44 age group. I'm going to click on that 5. My student grid is going to be updated with those numbers. And just as we've been doing this whole time, we can then perform searches um, on um, on those students, right? So once again, we might want to be really, really specific. And from that very specific demographic group, how many of those students are Snap ENT clients, right? So in that case, we would want to go back to our student keyword, type into our column header just the word Snap, use our filter icon here, and choose the filter option contains, and there you go. It is so these 2 students fall into the very specific groups of Hispanic Latino male who are in the age group of 25 to 44 who are also Snap clients. So we've done a whole lot of breaking down of our participants just with a couple searches, right? Okay. So let's see. I'm going to close out these searches that I did because I want to continue showing you guys a couple more of the NRS tables. So NRS table 3, this is one that is good to be aware of because it breaks our participants down by the program type that they are enrolled in as well as their age. So I am once again going to select fiscal year 1819. And as you can see, this is going to break it down. Either our ABE students, and just a FYI, our ABE students are those students who are in levels 1 through 4. Our ASE students, adult secondary education, those are some of our higher level students. So they are levels 5 and 6. And then we also have our ESL students as well as our IEL CE students as well. Only about a handful of programs have IEL CE. So these numbers are usually pretty low. And then those programs are further broken down if there are any IET students within those program groups. Okay. And again, this might not be a table that you use all that often, but it's just good to be aware of, especially if you need to know how many students are in a certain program. And just like all the other tables, these are numbers that you can click on, which will update your student grid, and you can run searches on. Okay. So I'm going to close out of that table. So we've already spent some time on table 4. Once again, that's basically our performance table. You can click on the participant numbers there as well. But table 4 is not necessarily a starting point if you are looking to um, really drill down on participants. That's where tables 1 and 2 are really going to come into play. And then you would use table 4 to search just those students as we were doing earlier, to look up things like their performance and so on and so forth. A couple other tables that I want to show you. We're going to skip table 4A. We're going to talk about table 4B though, because that is another really important table. This is a table where we can find out which of our students are being post-tested and what percentage of them are making gains. Okay. So, out of the participants that we have, we want to look in this column B. Okay. And this is going to tell us that out of all of our participants, this is how many who have post tested. Okay. So, in this instance, it'd be 12. If we go all the way over to column G, that is what is going to tell us out of our students who have been post tested, what percentage of them made a gain. And in this case, which is pretty good, 75% of those 12 students who were post tested made a gain, made at least one gain. Okay. And just as we did earlier, I'm going to close out this table real quick. Just as we did earlier, we can run a table 4B on a very specific group of students, right? So if I wanted to look at I want to choose a different group here. If I wanted to look at my, I'm trying to find a decent number here. Let's just do our 3 white females in the 25 to 44 age range. Let's click on those 3. I now want to run a table 4B on those students. I don't think any of these students have actually been post tested in the training database, but you get the idea, hopefully. And then just on that small group of students, you can find out how many have been post tested and what percentage of them have made a gain. Okay. All right. Any questions so far in regards to our NRS tables? Another table that I do want to mention, but don't want to spend a whole lot of time on, is NRS Table 5. You might recall me kind of harping on our follow-up measures yesterday. And NRS Table 5 is where you will see those follow-up measures being listed. Okay. All of those measures that I mentioned yesterday, you will find on Table 5. Now, there is the reason I don't want to spend too much time on this is because for the past few years, basically since we've had LACES, Table 5 has not necessarily been accurate. Just real quick, we do have a question. Did you say column B tells the number of participants post-tested? Yes, that would be column B. On table 4B, yes. Okay. So table 5, once again, that is going to show our follow-up measures, but it's been because of a few different reasons, we have not been able to get accurate data to show up on table 5. It has to do with certain confidentiality issues as it pertains to the information that we as a state can report. And the biggest issue is that we do not have access to median earnings for individuals. We can get that as aggregate information for a entire program or for the state, but we cannot get this information through data match for individual students. And so that has caused a bit of an issue when it comes to being able to upload the data back into LACES. So long story short, the table 5 is good to be aware of, but we are still working on trying to get it to show accurate follow-up measure information. As it is right now, we just We send that information out to programs as we get it through data match and manual outcomes. And then that's how we are reporting it to programs. Okay, just checking the chat for questions. Can you show one more time the table in a table search? I sure can. Okay. So so yeah, to stack searches within a table. So for example, if you wanted to run a table 4 on a certain demographic group, you would first want to um, select either table 1 or table 2. It really depends on the demographics that you want to run a search on, but we're going to run it on certain age groups. So I'm going to, wow, our 1718 training database has a whole lot more data than 1819. So I'll just use that. Um, so for example, if I want to isolate our Black or African American. I'm going to choose a different age group this time, actually. I'm going to choose our 16 to 18 age group for our female Black or African American students. So, so I've opened up table 2. I know which group I want to run a search on. So I'm going to click on that specific number within the table. And that number is going to be updated in our student grid. And so once that happens, we can now, uh, as I was saying earlier, stack another table on top of that table, which is basically just another way of saying that we're going to stack a new search on top of a old search. So I want to run a table 4 on those particular students. So I'm just going to click on table 4. I'm going to select my corresponding fiscal year. Once again, make sure those fiscal years match. So I'm going to select 1718. And it is going to show me those students' table 4 numbers or the performance of those particular students. Okay. Okay, good deal. All right. Okay, so I am going to close out that search. Take me back to our student grid. Could you reverse the order of the search? Okay, so like if you're asking, yes. Yeah, so if I ran a table 4 first, so I'm going to select table 4. I'm going to go back to, I'm going to select my fiscal year 1718. Okay. And now just remember your NRS tables, especially table 4, is only going to show your participants. Okay. So that total number at the bottom of table 4 is going to be less than the number that you were seeing in your student grid. Okay. So what we can do is we can click on that total number of participants in table 4. That's going to update our student grid to just those numbers. And now what we can do is we can run a table 2 for the same fiscal year on top of table 4. And it's going to show us that breakdown that we were seeing earlier. However, I will say, since table 2 is only showing your participants, it is still going to show the same number of students as you were seeing on table 4. Um, I hope that's what you meant. Hope that answers your question. All right. Okay. Let me go back to my agenda here. Okay, so any questions about the NRS tables or running searches from your NRS tables and really drilling down on that information? One other table that I just simply want to make you aware of is your NRS table 10, and that is strictly for correctional students. Because correctional students are not going to show up on table 5. They're not going to show up in your follow-up measures because if they're incarcerated, we can't really track them for things like employment and entering post-secondary education. So, but just to FYI, if you do have correctional students in your program, you can look at just those correctional students with NRS Table 10. Okay. Um, the good thing about this is while it doesn't have quite the breakdown that you might see on a Table 4, this will show you um, their MSG attainment as well. So right here is going to be your number of participants on table 10. And then column G is going to be your MSG attainment for those particular students. But just like anything else, you can click on this number of correctional students. And then what might be interesting to do is to run demographics on those students. So you might want to see the breakdown in demographics of your correctional students. So in that case, once you have isolated those correctional students, you can then run a table 2, and then that'll show you a breakdown for age and race and gender for your correctional students, which I always think is interesting. Okay. All right. Any questions when it comes to the NRS tables, drilling down on the NRS tables, running searches from the NRS tables? This is not one of those things that is necessarily intended to be all encompassing, but my goal is to at least kind of get you on the path to um, start to run your own searches and just kind of play around more in LACES, just to kind of dive a little bit deeper into your data. Okay. All righty. How we doing? How we doing time wise? How's everybody out there doing? Because we're about to be pretty close to being done with kind of what I wanted to cover with you all. I did want to cover reports real quick just to kind of show you where they were, as well as covering a couple different reports that you might be interested in. Okay. I'm going to close out my table 10 search. Always remember, these searches, unless you close them out, are not going to go away. So you might run into a situation where you have a search open that you forgot was open, and then you go to run some data or a report or something of that nature, or do some other search, and your data looks weird. So just always remember that if you don't want that search to be open, go ahead and close that search out. Good question. Somebody was asking about the current fiscal year. How do you get back to that? So in our searches panel here that we've had open, all you need to do to get back to your current fiscal year is just click on current fiscal year up here. That's going to be underneath your NRS drop down, and then just click on current fiscal year, and it'll add those parameters back to your student grid. Okay. So, what I want to do now. Okay. We have some reports that I just want to show you guys. So, um, if you are looking for reports, they are going to be over here where it says reports. Um, you're going to click on that, and that is actually going to open up a new box, and it's going to show you a whole slew of reports. Some of them that you might want to pay attention to more than others. And so, first and foremost, I want to ask you all, especially for the ones who have been in LACES for a little bit longer than others, what are some reports that you guys, that you all use and have found to be helpful?
Attendance. Attendance on that is
Okay. Alrighty. And what's the name of that specific report uh, that you use, Susan? Just scrolling down here.
standby. Oh, standby.
Okay.
Hours after last assessment.
Yes. Anybody else? Class attendance reports. Okay. Thank you, Susan. Hours after last assessment is a good one. Has anybody ever looked at the level gains report? Has anybody checked the level gains report? I bring up the level gains report because it is actually a very helpful report. It is going to show you for all of your students who have post tested, and I'm going to try to open up this report, but I'm going to have to um, share my screen. Okay, somebody's saying that they don't see it on their list. It's kind of hopefully it's there for you. If you scroll down a little bit, I think all of these are actually alphabetized, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Um, if you scroll down a little bit, kind of towards the middle, it should be there. But if it's not, then um, need to see what we can do to get that to you. Because the level gains is actually very helpful because it allows you um, to see any and all gains that a student who has post tested has made. Um, and even if a student didn't actually make any gains, you will see a zero next to their name uh, just because they post tested. And so that is why it is going to show you that information. It is not just going to show you um, if there has been a gain made. So if a student has post tested, it's going to show you any and all gains that have been made. What is helpful about this as well is you can kind of compare this. Um, well, actually, I was going to say compare it to Table 4, but that might not be the best thing to do. Which I'm going to tell you why once I go back to Table 4. But let me go ahead and print this level gains report off, and then I'm going to have to switch my screen, and I'll show you what it looks like. Okay. Sorry if things are looking weird on your screen right now. Okay. I'm going to stop my share real quick. I'm going to show you guys this report. Okay. And this isn't the greatest example because it's the training database. But it's going to have the name of the agency over here, which if it's just your program, then it's just going to be your program name. It's going to have the last and first name of the student. It's going to have their pre-test EFL, student ID, assess date, which assessment they actually post-tested in, and then it's going to show you their gains over here. Okay. So it might be 1, 2, you know, they might have made a gain in all 3 subjects, or they might not have made a gain, and it will let you know there. But this is a report that I would become familiar with if you have access to it. I did not know that certain access levels didn't have access to this report. So if that's the case, um, might need to speak to your director about that. Okay. I'm going to go back to LACES real quick. Okay. Some other reports that hopefully you have access to. Scroll down real quick. And I always get kind of lost in this list because there are so many. One that is also helpful is the current year pre and post assessments. So that is helpful because it will actually, and I believe it's just for the lowest subject area. It's not going to show you all subject areas, but for a student's lowest subject area, it's going to show you their pre-test score and their post-test score, and then it's going to show you that range. So if there was a gain, it's going to show you how much progress that student made on their scale score. If there was not a gain, or if there was perhaps some regression, it's going to show you the same thing. It's going to show you the number associated with that. And so that could be a helpful report, particularly for teachers to look at, to maybe kind of target their instruction a little bit better to see, to see not just what a student is struggling with, but how much they might be struggling with it. So that current year pre and post assessments, I would become familiar with that as well. Okay. Your own custom reports? Not that I know of. I don't believe that you can actually make your own reports. What you can do, and that's actually a good question. I appreciate that. I'm going to get out of this real quick to show you what you could do as far as making your own reports, because actually, yeah, you kind of can. I'm going to close out of this real quick. So what you could do is, depending on the types of searches that you want to run, depending on, if you want to have a report on, let's think of, here's what we can do. I'm going to close out my current fiscal year just to give me some more options for the number of students I can pull from my training database. So I'm going to open up table 4. This is just going to be an example of a report that I could run. I'm going to open up my table 4. I'm going to choose a fiscal year, and I'm going to select my lowest performing EFL group. Okay. So, for example, I'm going to select, so for my ABE levels, my lowest performing level is ABE level 2. So I'm going to select those students. Okay. Now you could do another search as well. So for my lowest performing ABE group, maybe I want to know how many of those students are, 25 to 44 year old. This is just kind of an example. You can kind of form whatever you want to. So I'm going to click. So out of that group of students, out of those 40 students, 15 of them are in the age group of 25 to 44. Okay. Now, this is where your view manager really comes into play. Okay. Depending on what you want to see in your report, you're going to have to select those fields in your view manager, because what shows up in your student grid, you can then export that. Okay. We had this export option as a CSV. Okay. Once I do that, that's going to download as a CSV down here. I can open that up. I know you guys might not be able to see this, so I'm going to share my screen for that. You can then open that up, and then you'll probably need to, kind of format this a little bit better, because a CSV is just gonna throw the information on a screen, um, pretty much as an Excel. So you might have to format this a little bit, but this is kind of a way that you can make your own reports. So using that export option. Did that answer your question, Terry? Okay, good deal. Okay. So yeah, that export option, and I've become very familiar with that, especially with the data match process that I've gone through recently. I have had to, I've had to export a lot of student grids and send them off as files to be data matched. So um, that can be very handy. Okay, I'm going to go back to LACES. There we go. Yes, thank you, Josh, for for the saved searches tip. That is a very good point. Let me show you real quick how to save searches.
How can I get information on my students?
Okay, 1 second. Yeah, so this search that I just did from table 4, then to table 2, as Josh was saying, this is a search that you can save. And you can save any search that you've done. We've done a lot of searches over this training, and any of those searches, you just go up here to save search. You can name your search whatever you want to. So I'm just going to say training. If I can spell training correctly, we're going to say training. And once you save a search, you're going to have a option when you pull out this search panel. You're going to have something called My Searches, and any searches that you save, like the training one that we just saved, even when you first log into LACES, like for example, I'm going to close these searches out that I just did. So I'm back to my normal student grid. But if I want to pull up that search, I just need to click on it, and bam, we're back at that information that we just did. So once again, thank you, Josh, for that. You don't have to keep doing these convoluted and stacked searches over and over again if you know that it's a search that you're going to have to need in the future for whatever your purpose might be. Okay. We did have a question. How could I get information on my students only? So are you, so just a class of yours? Just want to be sure that,
Yes.
okay, yes. Okay. That is another good question. I'm going to close out the searches, the search that I just made. Okay. So we are staying in our searches panel right here. Okay. If you haven't noticed, this is a very important section of the site. Okay, so if you want to run a search on just your students, on just a class of your students, we need to go down to enrollments. Okay, we're going to do the drop down there, and we have a couple options for classes. We have class all students, which is going to be any and all students that have ever been in a class of yours. They don't even have to be enrolled anymore. They could have a status of left, of um, enrolled, or what have you. That this is literally all of your students. If you want to run a search on students who are active in your class, who are actually enrolled, then you would use the enrolled students option. Whichever one you choose, once you click on that, you're going to have a new box that's going to pop up. And depending on your permissions in LACES, you might see a whole bunch of classes or you might just see yours. Um, but whichever the case is, uh, you would select the appropriate class. And for here in the training database, you'll see that it shows just every single class that has ever been set up in LACES. Sometimes when you run this search, it is only going to show your active classes. If that is the case, if it is only going to show your active classes, you can. Um, for some reason here, I'm not seeing that option. But you do have a way to clear that active classes filter. Okay. Um, for the purpose of the training, I just want to look at classes that might just start with, let's just say GED. So I'm going to filter for that. And then I can select one of my classes here. I'm just going to select this one. I don't even know if this class has any students. We're about to find out. But I'm going to select that class. I'm going to click apply. And I want to select another class because I want an example that has some students. So let's select this class right here. The teacher is going to be Superman. So hopefully he's a pretty good teacher. There we go. Okay, so once you select your class and click apply, the student grid is going to show just those students in your class. And then from there, we can just run the searches that we've been talking about this whole time. Any search that you want to run, if you want to run a table 4 on just this class, um, you can do so. Matter of fact, I'm curious about how Superman's class is doing. So I'm going to run a table 4 on his class. Let me make sure. What's the fiscal? What's the? I don't even know what the fiscal year of the class was. So we're gonna. Okay, there we go. So I am running the table 4 on this particular class, and those students who are participants are doing pretty well. They have a MSG attainment rate of 67%. So, But that is a way that you could see just your students. You can also, if you're so inclined, can also do a search on a particular staff member. Now, you might just have access um, to yourself, uh, but there is another way that there is a way that you could do that. So, so if we go back down to enrollments, just like we did to search for a class, you will see staff. Okay, you can add that. A box is going to pop up with um, all the staff members that are in that program. Once again, what you see is going to be entirely dependent on your role in LACES and your access. Um, but you can also run a table 4 or a table 4B or whatever type of search on a particular staff member as well. Okay. So I'm going to choose one. I'm going to click apply. So the thing about this, which can be kind of tricky, is that we understand at the state level that staff members sometimes share students. And so um, just by simply clicking on a staff member, because this is going to show any and all students that have been assigned to that teacher, instructor, or staff member, what have you. And so running a table 4 on a staff member might or might not be um, the most accurate way to gauge that teacher's effectiveness, if that was your purpose. Um, Simply because, again, teachers might share students. So if you wanted to be a little bit more accurate about how you are doing as a teacher, or if somebody else was running this search, doing it by class might be the more effective way. But this is a way that you can run searches on a particular staff member as well. Okay. Any other questions? Those are some really good questions. Some tough questions. uh, any so pretty much what I wanted to make sure to cover for the purpose of this training, I have already covered. So if you guys have any other questions, please let me know. I do want to reiterate what I said yesterday, that this will not be the first time or the only time that we offer these trainings. So if there is anything in particular that is kind of stumping you, or you're not really sure what to ask, then fear not. You will have future opportunities. And also to reiterate, this information is in the Canvas course as well. There are specific instructions on how to do a whole bunch of things in LACES located in that Canvas course. And I do understand that there are a few people who still need access to that. So I will send that out to everybody who registered for this training. But yeah, that's pretty much as far as LACES 101 Part 2 is concerned. For my agenda, that's pretty much all I have. So once again, just going to open up the floor to see if you have any questions. Got a question about the recording. Yes, this is going to be recorded, and as well as the 2 trainings from yesterday. And so once we are able to get those recordings, we're going to need to clean them up a little bit, because there's a lot of background noise at the beginning, especially. So once we kind of clean those up a little bit, then we will get those posted um, to the Canvas course. So each training is going to be in its respective module. Okay. Anything else? Good deal. I'm glad to hear it. Thank you, BJ. All right. Well, if there aren't any other questions at this time, um, congratulations. We finished a little bit early, but we are going to stick around for just a few minutes after. If you do have a question that you want to throw in the chat,
Great training, John.
um, and then we will get to you on that. And as always, don't forget to email us. Um, Nicole loves emails. She loves people to email her. Call her. She loves it. Um,
Yes, shucks.
so, but anyways, no, yeah, yeah. Please don't hesitate to reach out to us, to your PAs. We're here to help. There will be future LACES trainings. We just need to figure out some dates. The next two that are on deck are going to be LACES for teachers. Jana Jenkins is going to help me out with that one, and then also LACES for directors. That's going to be kind of early to mid February. But, anyways, thank you guys. Have a great rest of your day. Have a great weekend, and just let us know if you need anything else.